So I promised to take just a few minutes to say why we came up with this event. And the reason of having women of Calista is that there were no women in the Calista events, very little women. And our first year was evaluated poorly, so we got what can I say, bad evaluation because there were too few young researchers participating at our events, but especially we did not pay attention to the minorities. And this to me was kind of an awakening, realizing that there is an unconscious bias when our male colleagues form the list of speakers. And me and Barbara could totally witness this in our event in Paris regarding the geometry of machine learning, and also the event in Scalea. You were not participating, so both of these events, which were at the border between mathematics and computer science, especially the applied mathematics, is kind of dominated by the males, I think. It's like even more than just mathematics. The list of speakers was unacceptably short when it came to women. And there was one. Yeah, in Paris there was one. Marianne also participated with me at this very awkward meeting, you remember, when we were saying, they were saying, how can we invite more women? And there was me and Marianne in the meeting, and they didn't think of inviting us. There was between funny and outrageous, right? Because at the end of the meeting, I gave a call to Maurizio, and I said, why didn't you think about somebody? And even Marianne, you remember, you said, couldn't you think of a woman that could be invited? And they were like, no, we have no idea what we could invite. That was kind of ridiculous. And then I sent them a list, and I'm so glad that Barbara could be invited, because originally they were inviting just one woman that declined. So according to them, it was perfectly fine to have a meeting of 4 days without a single woman. And also they invited Stéphanie Lassonnière and Noémie Combe, and I don't know if you had the pleasure of hearing their talks.
Stephanie, yes.
Yes, so I think they gave an excellent talks. So I think they were like top of the game. So I'm like saying, okay, why not inviting women? So this is something very difficult for me. And as a chair for the action, I must say that I was so glad accepting the invitation of Eugenia, saying let's have an event like this in Bratislava. But I must also say that I wanted to defend myself from the accusation, why not enough speakers, women? But then I'm trying to, in this round table, to find strategies to improve the numbers, because I really don't know how we can improve the numbers, because that's a big problem. So I leave Eugenia, perhaps you will be the next saying something about this.
Right, so I become the gender awareness representative for Calista Cost Action, and one of my tasks is to make sure that in the list of speakers there will be 25 to 30% women, because we know this is the ratio among Calista participants, Calista registered people. Right, but also other things that I will try to work on is to spread the voice about job openings, for example, for women, and also perhaps we should also try to stay in contact after this meeting and organize another meeting, maybe during when there is more time also for other people to join, because now the semester has already started.
I can say perhaps a special session in our general meeting, why not, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That could be an idea.
Which is Corfu 2024.
Yes, a special session, yes.
Okay, so yeah, I'm happy to hear a lot of ideas and feedback, and yeah, please contact me. So now we also have other...
Yes, but the problem is that, can I interrupt you for a moment? The problem is that it's great, this idea, but as a gender awareness representative, we should make sure that in this special session is not only males speaking, because that is actually what Francesco D'Andrea was telling me happened in Naples. They had a special gender awareness afternoon, and then the colleagues couldn't find the women
Yeah.
speaking in that
So,
afternoon.
Sorry if I interrupt. If
No,
I hear
please.
someone saying, "Oh, in my field, it happens that there are no women," I think we can safely reply that they didn't look very hard into that
Yeah,
field,
no,
because
that's
there's
true.
always someone, a woman, a non-binary researchers that they
Yes,
are
of course.
not
Yes.
interacting with, perhaps because of implicit bias and yeah. And so.
Yes.
Okay, and there will be other.
No, yes, no, this thing of the implicit bias is present everywhere. I want to tell you a story because I was in another cost action previously, and I had something organized that I think that it was incredible, no? How the people cooperated. We were always complaining about this unconscious bias, and also these little things that happen every day that, like a drop, they they make a hole at the end, no? After you are with your male colleagues and even with your women colleagues also, because the gender awareness is for both genders. Not all women are aware of this, but they suffer it. And then what we did is to we ask all the women in the cost action to send us stories like this. For example, I remember
Storytelling. Very nice.
Yes, they send us stories. Not big things, but for example, you are in a group doing some research, doing something, and then you come up with a new idea. And then at the end is one man that is explaining to you that idea.
Perfect. Yes, yes.
Things like this happen, and if you say, "Look, that is what I said before," then they tell you, "Ah, Mama, they dismiss it like if it were nothing." But these things go little by little. Then you get also some of the stories that we get also about obscene comments from the students in the evaluations. I had something written, but I forgot my glasses.
In the hotel or in the bag?
In the hotel.
Ah,
yeah.
Dennis, we cannot do anything. Can I read it for you, perhaps?
I don't know.
It's in Spanish. No, wait a moment.
No.
Come, no. Obscene words and pictures in evaluation come with the I cannot read your handwriting.
Intuitively, no.
No. It's the
Being
same.
taken for a secretary. That's
yes,
right.
being taken for a secretary. Oh, if you are not taken by a secretary, they still give you
Secretarial
the
duties.
of a secretary.
So
Which
true.
is,
So true.
you know.
Right.
But then with all these things, they were anonymous. I was the only one knowing the name of the person because they had to send them to me. I put them together and anonymously. We gave it to a writer, and he wrote a theater play.
That's beautiful.
And it was in the final meeting of the action. It was represented.
But can we represent it in Corfu, perhaps?
Well, if you want
no?
to repeat the idea, I mean, we say every.
What do you say, Karen? It would be nice to do this play in Corfu for raise awareness. I like that.
It's anonymous, so nobody will know if you are the person that suffered this or you were the one complaining about that.
I think it's
But
great.
it would be better maybe to organize maybe a training on how to respond to these situations.
That could be.
Right?
That could be, but one thing is that to be protected, you have to be aware of them, and then don't let that go under your skin. It's we of course can have an expert in gender that tells us. For example, we had also in the conferences. In some conferences, we had gender experts that would come and would give us a talk. And I remember that there was a neuroscientist that came to destroy the idea that we women in STEM have male brains because that's what they say also to us. You are here, okay. What happens is that you have
This
a male brain.
ridiculous, right?
Completely. So she went on with experiments, actual experiments that she did in her lab. She showed that it was just not true, that the brain is very plastic and can change. For example, the one thing I remember is that they say that men are better in orienting themselves in space. No?
Not necessarily.
Well, then they did this experiment. They put women and men. I imagine that they selected them appropriately for in order to do the statistics, and they put them to play Tetris for a couple of weeks, sometime every day. They were playing Tetris. You remember that because it's an old game. I don't know this game that the blocks are falling and then you have to put them without any hole. Tetris is called. So then after the training in Tetris, they made proofs on these capacities, these orienting capacities, and then there was no difference at all between men and women. That was one of the experiments, but there were more. I could bring this woman maybe again.
I think it would be great.
Things,
in the session, if we have a special session.
She was very charismatic, I have to say. I made good friends with her.
That's perfect.
I think it's very important to break all these common places about men and women, which is really not possible to.
I think that if we tell her come to Corfu,
she will come to Corfu.
We're sure young women want to start research. I feel like
maybe a session with gender talk and dissemination also.
Yes, that'd be great. Yes,
we have both things together.
And perhaps you can also ask Silvia because she was the PI of that, right?
Yes, but I was in charge of the.
Okay, so you're already okay. Okay, thank you, Barbara.
So it's part of the certificate that I'm doing at Technische Universität of Vienna. There are similar certificates at other universities around the world, and mainly in Europe, but not only. So we learn a lot of things, and in particular that we have two different systems of thinking. So on the left side, you have the system one, which is thinking fast. And on the right, you have system two, which is thinking slow. And they are responsible for two different tasks. The system one is automatic, is very intuitive, very fast, unconscious, subliminal, and it's based on emotion, habits, and also the context. And it's the one responsible for our safety in the case of emergency. So very important for us. And it typically take decisions when you have no time, something is not relevant, so you have to just choose something very fast, and also under pressure, mental exhaustion, and so on. System two is the one that we are using when we are thinking slow, when we are calculating, when you are conscious of what you're doing, when you are reflecting, and this is based on our values, our convictions, or also on all that we learned before. Typically this you use when you have to think for the first time on one task, or when you rested, or when it's very important for you. The bias appears when you are using system one. And more precisely, under stress, fatigue, emotional challenges, mental exhaustion, time pressure, and so on. So there is a good news and a bad news. So first of all, I should say before I continue, what I'm saying here is based on the course that I had, and you see the web page there, the Diversity Campus. So they offer trainings, and this is very convenient because it's online. So it's very well done. You go through the steps. You have to finish the task, complete the task before you go on. There are questionnaires, and it's very, very, it's very good. So you can import this kind of thing in your university in Europe or outside. You can have it in English and German, probably. Okay. So I'm going back to the unconscious bias. Two news, one bad, one good. What do you prefer, the good one or the bad one?
The bad one. Bring everything. Bring it on.
So the bad one is everybody has unconscious bias, independent of the gender. So because all of us need the system one, and system one uses bias has to go faster in decision. So every one of us. Independently of the genders, that's bad news. The good news is these are unconscious bias. This means that people are not conscious of this. And this means also they don't want to be mean. With this, I want to stress that we have to be supportive of our colleagues that may do mistakes. And we have to change together. No. I think it's very important to be able to change together, because we don't want to break the society.
I thought some bones.
Because there are a lot of danger outside.
No, I understand.
So it's really important that we change together. And so remembering that these are unconscious bias is very important. Okay, so yeah?
If it makes you feel better, think of super biased people as being sick.
Right, okay.
I think training has a lot.
No, but thank you for saying that.
I think it's
Thanks
important.
a lot. Yes.
Because we all get frustrated, upset, but these are unconscious bias. So let me give you some of these that I learned this week. So survivorship bias. So this is a story about a ship, after the Second World War, there were aircraft returning from the war, and some of them had suffered from some bullets. And so the engineer wanted to improve safety in order to build safer aircraft that stand more. And so they thought that reinforcing the places where the bullet were was a good thing to do, to make safer, in order to have less holes, let's say. What do you think? Was this a good strategy? No. So this is exactly the survivorship bias. You get aircraft bags with some holes, but these are the aircraft that came back. The other ones are crushed.
Yes.
And so the places where the other were touched are more sensible than these ones. These holes are fine because the aircraft came back, so they survived. So this is exactly what's happening for us, because for my department, in particular in Lille, there are quite a few women that left mathematics, but we never go and ask them why.
So true.
And they have the answers. I mean, we all year are survivors, right? We had a lot of bullets, but we are still there. We are here together. But the one that should leave, they have the worst experiences to be learned of. So this is the first bias. Default bias. So Example, I got the picture of my kids this week. They had picture at the school, and I become from the school 3 sets of pictures. In each of these sets, I got a lot, two different sets of picture, a lot of picture. I had to choose nothing. I just had to sign to pay. This is a default bias in the sense that the photographer chooses by default to give the same sets to everybody, and he knows perfectly that most of us will just sign and pay without choosing properly what we want. And it's quite expensive, but most of us, parents, we have a lot of things to do. So by default, we will sign and pay. So this is because action needs energy, and if we just want to save some energy, we just go to the default option. This may have the consequences, for instance, in France, they changed the training system, and now before math was kind of obligatory for everybody, so there was quite a few women studying math for baccalaureate, and now it's an option. So the number of women, females, dropped drastically, because now they have to sign for this option, and it's, of course, then a lot of unconscious bias is coming in, and this is not the default option anymore. A lot of women dropped. So less women studying mathematics in France because of this. So if we want to just increase the number by default, it should be a lot of math.
Yes.
The halo effect. So this is a bias when you have somebody that has a beautiful characteristic. Compared to someone who has a less beautiful characteristic, you will prefer the one that has this beautiful characteristic, despite the fact that on the paper, perhaps the other one is better. So this is an unconscious bias that goes for sympathetic people, for instance, or, well, we all have this bias. Confirmation bias, so here, again, this is an example that I'm taking from this diversity campus training. You have candidate CVs. One is coming from a very known university in US. The other ones are coming from unknown universities. You have unconsciously a preference for this very well-known university, and despite the fact that on paper perhaps it's not clear, you will just confirm your first impression, because we like to confirm our first
to be right.
To be right and confirm. So this is confirmation bias.
It is true.
Groupthink. So imagine on the table there are a lot of male colleagues deciding for something and just one female. Well, the atmosphere is very enthusiastic. They want to decide for something, but the female colleague is not completely sure that's the right thing to do. But it's difficult to go against the flow.
Yes.
So this is like a group thinking together, and of course you have tendency to go in the direction of a group. So I experienced this for jobs in France, so where I was in the committee, and it's really difficult sometimes to go against the flow. So there are some measures that you can use against it. So first of all, to ensure that there is diversity of opinions among the colleagues. One measure is, I think, very good, is to appoint a devil's advocate, so someone will contradict all the time, everyone, just in order to contradict, to be able to hear some other opinion. So this is very efficient, I think. And also make voting anonymous also helps, because you don't have the pressure.
Yes.
In-group bias is when you prefer your group.
Inevitable.
So we are all, all have this bias. So this is a shortcut that representativeness heuristic is a shortcut that we use when we are using system 1. For instance, from this 3-person, if you have to choose in 1 millisecond which one you would prefer as boss, probably you will choose the right one, I suppose, because there are some prototypes that you have in your head, and just if you think fast, you will take the person that that is the most close to the prototype, let's say, which for mathematics is usually a white male colleague. So we are, having this. Availability heuristic, so here an example, again, I'm taking this from the course Diversity Campus. An organization considering expanding home office, and then the boss said, yes, but you know, there was this one colleague who just stayed at home and stopped working, and yeah, so is it a good reason for the decision about home office? Probably not, because there are probably a lot of persons that were very, let's say, working hard and making a lot of profit for the company using this home office. So, instead of empirical data, available examples are used, and these are just shortcuts. We should compare always, or give an example of the contrary to go against this availability heuristics. This is like when we think too fast. Anchoring effect, so that's numbers. If you go for a job and they ask you what kind of salary you would like to have, well, usually male colleagues will give a high salary, women colleagues will tend to give lower for some reasons. But the first number that you give stays in the head of the HR representative as an anchor, so then they will compare to this number. Also in special offers in shops, they tell you a new price because before it was more expensive. Now you have the impression that the price is lower, and you have the impression that you do a good deal. So this is also important in salaries. Last bias that I wanted to mention, the blind spot. All of us are subject to unconscious bias, and we often forget about ourselves. So there's a lot to do with ourselves first, to see where we do some unconscious thinking, and this is where I want to stop. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, it was great.
Now, so Karen will show us the slides.
Oh, you have slides too.
I
So
also have
humiliating
slides,
for us. We didn't do the slides.
Which one was sharing?
Okay.
Sharing.
No.
Oh, no. It's claimed on sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this really goes sort of to what we were talking about earlier about underrepresentation, and I'm just going to discuss a little bit about what this looks like in my field, which is operator algebras. So operator algebras itself, of course, has been around since, say, the 40s. I mentioned this in my earlier talk. It has links to many, many, many other fields. It's very active. It has, papers, lots of conferences every single year. Papers published in, great journals like Annals, Invenciones, etc., etc. However, it is not so inclusive. So there's this wonderful paper, Women's Representation in Mathematics Subfields, Evidence from the Archive, And it turns out that operator algebras is among the worst for representations of women, based on this 2012 study. So, for example, the fraction of female authors was second lowest among all these 30 mathematical subjects that were looked at. So that's pretty embarrassing for us. Female authors, we're happily there in the significantly fewer section, which is again not very nice. And if you look at things like prestigious conferences, so here's a list of all the conferences that happened at Oberwolfach that are C-star operator algebra, NCG, or like something in this area. And the MFO's own equity, diversity, and inclusion policy suggests that 20% of the participants should be women or diverse genders. So when you're preparing an Oberwolfach proposal, you have to list proposed participants in your proposal. And you're supposed to give a gender breakdown as well. So as you can see here, it's sort of small, I'm sorry, but...
It's ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, so we have managed to achieve this twice since 2010.
Ridiculous.
Just like squeezing in there 20.83 at the C-star Algebras conference in 2022. And this one that was 21.74, that was also hybrid, so I feel like that probably affected things. They also suggest that the organizers should be a mix of genders. This has been achieved, I think I counted 5 times, most of which were free probability, and there happens to be one very well-known woman in free probability, and she is the one who is on the organizer in each one of these. So this represents maybe 2 women organizers, even though there's five times.
Yes.
So it's pretty bad. Okay, so oops, I missed some text somehow. No. Okay, yeah. So we do see an upward trend, which is good. And by 2018, you can see that we're at least mostly in double digits in terms of percentage of female and gender diverse participants, other than subfactors. But there's obviously a long way to go. And I was not going to include the next slide, but then I decided to, based on some things that we were saying just earlier. So in 2015, I was the co-organizer of a semester in non-commutative geometry and operator algebras, which was to run in the subsequent year. And there were supposed to be 4 week-long conferences. Now, I noticed that one of the proposed speaker lists had 0 women. And so, assuming this was just some minor oversight, I mentioned to one of the other organizers that we should really strive to have at least 1 woman speaker at each conference. And I was told that this was impossible, cannot be done.
No, we received the same,
Yeah.
right, Marianne?
Yeah.
Impossible, they told
So
us.
I resigned from this organizing committee because, I've always been, pro,
Yeah, of
increasing
course.
women in
Yes.
mathematics, and I'm like, I'm not going to sign my name to this. But okay, partially out of spite, I will admit, I decided to start compiling a list of women in operator algebras, and I managed to find a list of over 100, well over 100. This is close to 200. This is actually way out of date now, unfortunately, because there's only so much bandwidth a person can do. But basically, I was going on to the archive. I was adding names that I saw. Whenever I saw a speaker that was a female, I put them on my list, and it just grew and grew and grew. So basically, people had no excuse.
Yeah.
And this turned out to be quite nice, actually, because then after this, I did get a lot of conference organizers asking me for the list so that they could have a look. So there's one idea for people, perhaps. It's a lot of work, but it was very useful, at least for a while, until it became out of date. Okay, so I feel like this, around 2018, after this conference, it was a bit of a tipping point. I think people just got sort of fed up with the whole thing. So we have, in our field, done a couple things that I want to highlight here to address this imbalance. And I think it really is starting to show improvements in our field. So the first one was a series of conferences called Women in Operator Algebras. And the second thing I want to highlight is something called the Operator Algebra Mentor Network. So the Women in Operator Algebras, this sort of also stemmed a little bit from our apparently we don't have any women in operator algebras comment. And this was organized, the first one was in 2018, organized by myself and 3 other women in operator algebras. And I have to say, we did have some naysayers along the way, like even my supervisor was kind of saying, well, you know, women already get too many invites and this isn't going to be very prestigious, so they might not want to go and you'll probably not get very many participants. So I'm sort of completely missing the point that, you know, there's more to this conference than necessarily just going for the prestige. We wanted a nice conference to all get together. Fortunately, this was not a problem in the end. So this was actually based on previous women in blah, blah, blah conferences. And it took a different style from an average conference. So the first thing was, the focus was active research in small groups instead of just talks from morning to night. The projects were proposed in advance by, you know, people that felt confident enough to propose and lead a project. And then we did something which I thought was very nice, to avoid just inviting the usual suspects, to avoid just looking at the last conference and inviting those people, because, you know, it's hard to think of new people. We invited half, and then we left spots open to application. And so the people actually did have to put in some sort of application because we wanted to make sure that they were able to do the research involved, whatever. But this worked very well in introducing us to people that we didn't necessarily know and wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And all the groups were formed in advance so that they could have some preparatory material and things could really get going as soon as the conference started. And it was very successful. So I've gathered here some things people said, that it was phenomenal, it was unusually effective, very beneficial for me. It was nice to make connections and make progress on an actual project. Friendliest conference I've ever been to, which I can testify was true for me myself as well. That it was collaborative and supportive, made people feel respected and valued. A nice thing too, this was coming from a postdoc at the time who really brought back her research confidence and was like, oh, I can be a successful researcher. I don't have to prove myself to all these people around me. I can just ask questions and just work away. Yeah. And then people saying that I think this will positively impact the diversity in the field, as well as the mathematical developments. So there's our little group in Banff, 2018. And since then, there's been 2 follow-up conferences, both at the Banff International Research Station. One was during the pandemic, so it was hybrid, and then the other was last year. And this has already led to papers published in high-ranked journals, which was, of course, always a hope, and, you know, makes me want to go back to my supervisor and say, look, you see, it was prestigious after all. So this is just a few of them. And of course, we expect that there's still more on the way. I mean, I will put something out on the archive that stemmed from one of these conferences, hopefully this weekend. So yeah, women can do math. Okay, so the other thing is this operator algebras mentor network. So this came from a 2018 conference for young mathematicians in C-star algebras, or YMC-star-A for short. And basically, a group of women had got together for like a lunch sort of thing, or breakfast, I can't remember. And there was a lot of feeling of, you know, lacking of mentors, and sometimes people felt abused or harassed and they didn't have anyone to advocate for them. And I think one thing that's true of something like Calista and pure mathematics in general is that, you know, it's really your research field that you're closest to, rather than the people necessarily in your department, especially when you're a younger researcher, because you tend to move around. You're not going to spend undergrad, PhD, postdoc all in one place. So these are the people you know, and we felt that it would be useful if there could be some sort of mentoring within our group. So this was so this was causing people to, for example, leave early, as we were saying, or suffer their career. I know I suffered a little bit when I stood up to this guy in the for the semester program. So these are just some names I would like to mention that set up the network and wrote its bylaws. It operates on a 3-tier structure. There is senior mentors, which are usually either tenure track, or permanent people. Junior mentors, which are typically postdocs, and mentees, which are PhD students. And the senior and junior mentors can be of any gender, but the mentees are supposed to be either women or other gender minorities in mathematics. And usually what happens is they'll meet regularly over Zoom, say once a month. And the groups are reshuffled every year if they want to be. They don't have to be, but most I've noticed tend to want to be reshuffled. And the point is that their networks grow this way. So here are some of the main goals. We want to retain operator algebraists who are underrepresented or minority, provide early career researchers with a trusted ally, source of career advice.
What happens? That made us worry.
You know, career work-life balance type things, connections between operator algebras, blah, blah, blah. So I won't bother saying absolutely everything there. And since we started it in 2019, we now are in 26 different countries. And the current board, I'm on.
No, vabbè, Barbara, what are you doing?
I'm one of the members of the current board, and as you can see, we're from all over the place. And the board is meant to reflect these 3 different tiers. We've also organized other events. So for example, we've done like online career panels and CV critiques and how to write an abstract type things. We've done some actual mentorship training programs where we had when an external come in and talk to us. We try to do in-person meetups at various conferences, so maybe we'll get like the mentees all together for a lunch or something at one of the conferences. We actually are now a nonprofit, and we do have some money, so we have provided some travel funding to people in our mentee target group, and we've had a lot of network-wide discussions and sessions and so. So here are a few things people have said. This is a PhD student in California. So we were able to provide her financial assistance to go to a conference. And she said that her monthly mentorship meetings have helped her learn to navigate the job market, career strategies, and improve her professional network. Arundhati is a postdoc, so she's at the junior mentor tier. And this has helped her retain contacts when she's in a slightly isolated university research-wise. So it's been very valuable to her and to us that we get to still sort of keep her in our network. And Marcelo Laca is a senior professor in Victoria, and he's been a great support of the network and has always said that he feels like he gets as much back as he gives, which is it's very nice to hear. Anyway, I will stop there. Here's some further information if you're interested.
Very good job. Thank you. I also think it'll be great for Barbara and Karen if we can share the slides in our website, because those people that miss your interesting talks can see them. Instead of the recording, it's just easier.
So it would be nice to think of something that can transcend the cost action, right? Because
absolutely, yes.
Calista will end at some point, while operator algebra mentoring and the network itself is a lifelong organization. And
we can think in Corfu, right? We'll have a special gender session.
But maybe it's too late. It's going to be.
No, Corfu is next year.
Yeah,
then there is one more year to go. No? You want to do?
No,
Very well. You are active. I like it. Do it.
I also, with the winter, when the first women in operator algebras happened, and people are sitting there saying they can't even find one woman to come to their conference. I was like, we had 5 people named Sarah at our conference. If we can get 5 Sarahs, you can get 5 women.
One of which a good friend of mine, Reznikov.
Yeah.
Sharing her office with me for a few years.
Yes. She was one of the Sarahs.
So
okay, we are late.
Because Noemi, anyway,
Sorry,
has a talk about
we are late.
Gender bias. It's going to be very, very interesting.